The Pitt is a harrowing drama about doctors, and it's also the most honest legal drama we've ever reviewed. But the legal issues that underline the show's major plotlines do not play out in real life entirely like they're depicted on screen. So let's lawyer up and get to work.
Do you know what this is?
Nope. You ever seen anything like this before?
Nope. Me neither.
Well, that just goes to show you how old I am. This looks like measles. Many people get better on their own, like Georgia. However, as many as 1 in 20 kids that get measles get pneumonia, like your son.
Are your children vaccinated against measles?
No.
The MMR vaccine is perfectly safe. Measles is not.
I've read about kids who've been paralyzed from a spinal tap.
There is 0 risk of paralysis.
He could die from this?
1 in 5.
Do the spinal tap.
No! Can't you just give him steroids without the spinal tap?
If there's no ATM, the steroids could suppress his immune system, making it harder to fight off the pneumonia.
But it says here
Can you put your damn phone away? Your son is critically ill. The longer that we wait, the higher the risk of permanent brain damage. What is not clear here?
Hillary, he has a tube down his throat.
They're
He can't
not
breathe on his own.
poking holes in my son's spine!
Wow.
What the hell is this?
These are the people from the Pitt Fest shooting that we couldn't save today. We couldn't save them, but we can still save your son.
You're an asshole.
Dad calls Dr. Robbie an asshole, but he changed his mind. When the boy's mother leaves the room, the father consents to the procedure, and the ER team springs into action. And here we hit our first legal question. Can one parent consent over the other parent's objection? Here's the rule. In most states, including Pennsylvania, either parent can independently consent to medical treatment for a minor child. This is called the one-parent consent rule. It exists for an extremely practical reason. If you needed both parents to sign off on every medical decision, every divorced couple in America would be creating a medical emergency every time their kid needed stitches at 2 a.m. and one parent wasn't answering the phone. So when dad overrides mom and consents to the spinal tap, he's on solid legal ground. One parent's yes is legally sufficient, even when the other parent is actively saying no. The exception would be if there's a custody order that specifically allocates medical decision-making authority to one parent. But unless they have that kind of order, either parent can authorize treatment. The spinal tap happens. The child survives the immediate crisis, but mom is not happy. If you think the malpractice case is messy, wait until the family court filing lands. Paging divorce lawyers, stat. There's potential criminal liability too. A parent commits the crime of endangering the welfare of a child in Pennsylvania when they knowingly endanger the welfare of a child by violating a duty of care, protection, or support. This shows up most prominently in the medical context with faith healing, parents who refuse to give needed medical care to a child who then dies. This can also happen, specifically in Pennsylvania, with certain groups like the Amish, who don't actually have a religious objection to modern medical care. Instead, for them, it's more about cultural and religious mores and folkways about reaching outside of the community for medical care. Either way, there's no religious or cultural exemption to Pennsylvania's criminal law. But in the Pit, Dad ends up bailing himself and his wife out because the threatened harm is eliminated by Dad choosing the spinal tap.
This job's really important to me and my sister. You know, I support both of us.
It's gonna go great. Just tell them what happened. You're not at fault. Your job's not in jeopardy.
I mean, the lawyer said that I could...
The lawyer's job is to try and shake your confidence, so don't let them. You're a very good doctor. I have been training residents for years. You are one of the very best.
When we get to season 2, we find out mom has sued the hospital and the doctors who performed the spinal tap in a civil malpractice suit because her son has brain damage. Dr. Mel King and Dr. Ellis are named as defendants. We don't know much about the nature of his brain damage except for the warnings the doctors gave during season 1. But I'm skeptical about the merits of the underlying claim. Did the lumbar puncture cause the injury? And would we even know for sure less than a year later? A spinal tap has known risks, and you generally can't sue for a known inherent risk that was properly disclosed. Now, a person can argue that a medical procedure caused harm even when that procedure was the standard of care. They can argue that it was performed negligently, or that this particular patient wasn't a good candidate, or that something went wrong in execution. This is harder than it sounds. In Pennsylvania, as in most states, you need a certificate of merit from a physician verifying that there is a legitimate basis for the claim before it can proceed. While you may think that it's easy to find some quack doctor to give a certificate of merit, it's actually not that simple. Medical malpractice cases are complex and time-consuming. The med-mal lawyer that has to foot the bill for that, and if the doctor charges $750 an hour, the charges rack up quickly. But here's the part that is going to haunt me.
I'm looking for Dr. Mel King.
Yes?
I'm Morgan Stiles, one of the hospital's attorneys. I'm here to escort you upstairs for your deposition.
The deposition is scheduled for July 4th. July 4th, during her shift. Nobody in the legal profession is working on the 4th of July, except possibly to write strongly worded emails about why they shouldn't be working on the 4th of July. And let's talk about the timeline. It's been compressed to the point of legal fantasy. The injury manifested in September of 2025. The depositions are happening less than a year later. That's way too soon. Realistically, we're talking 2 years before deposition.
Hey Eaglets, just wanted to let you know that Scout Owl filmed an entire segment about the most talked about scene in season 2 of The Pitt. That is, of course, charged nurse Dana performing a forensic rape kit procedure on a victim of sexual assault. And yes, we are worried that even accurately describing that scene will get this entire video demonetized, because we don't pull punches and we don't use euphemisms around here. So our legal analysis is often something we cannot actually talk about on YouTube. But you can watch all of it plus hours of additional exclusive content ad-free and early by signing up for Nebula, the sponsor of today's video. Nebula is the streaming service that my friends and I built where you can watch all the content from your favorite creators like Jetlag, Maggie May Fish, Real Engineering, PhilosophyTube, Real Life Lore, and of course, LegalEagle. All ad-free and early. Plus, watch countless Nebula exclusive videos made with love, time, effort, and increased budgets that you won't find on YouTube. I highly recommend you check out Lindsay Ellis's original documentary, The Macabre World of Police Body Cam YouTube. It's a fascinating expose on how this wildly popular genre of true crime content is altering social attitudes about law and policing. And check out our exclusive videos about how to abolish ICE, the wild and forgotten attempts to ban booze in America, and how RFK Jr. can and cannot legally ban vaccines. But the only place you can watch these videos is on Nebula. In fact, every LegalEagle video we make is an extended cut on Nebula, like the legal analysis of improv comedy scenes I did with Brennan Lee Mulligan, or my beatdown of Kim Kardashian's hilariously bad legal drama, All's Fair. Both contain a ton of more insight and hilarious moments that we had to cut from the YouTube version. And if you use my link or code, you can get 50% off an annual subscription, so that's a year's worth of the best content for only $30, or you can get 40% off a lifetime of Nebula. Pay once for $300 and then never again. It truly is the best deal of all. Either way, you can click or scan now to continue watching LegalEagle on Nebula, or I'll see you in court.
But season 2, episode 7, Mel waits pensively for her deposition scheduled for 2028 while concerning noises come from her sister's bedroom is not the television anyone wants to make or watch. Working on the 4th of July though, that's a doctor thing. But after her deposition, Dr. Ellis finds Dr. Mel and they have this critical exchange.
I just finished my deposition.
Oh, should I go up now?
Yeah, just wait until you get a call.
Well, I'd ask how it went, but we're not supposed to discuss the case.
This isn't a discussion. It's a monologue, so shut up and listen. The malpractice case is frivolous. The mother of the measles kid claims we caused intellectual decline by performing a spinal tap. But the tap was perfect with no complications. Her son presented with altered mental status due to low oxygen from measles pneumonia. Any change in intellect was due to hypoxic brain injury. It had nothing to do with your spinal tap. End of monologue. We never discussed the case. I gotta get some sleep.
Thanks. I guess.
So did either of these doctors commit a crime? A few things here. There's no absolute prohibition on witnesses discussing depositions, but it is standard practice for attorneys to instruct clients not to do exactly this before the other witness has testified. The reason is exactly what you'd expect. If witness A tells witness B what she was asked, witness B can shape her own answers so they align. But in Dr. Ellis's defense, Dr. Mel's own attorneys would have prepared her before her deposition. They would have walked her through the allegations, the theory of the case, what the plaintiff is trying to prove, and the defense's theory of the case. So Ellis telling her that the spinal tap was perfectly executed and that any change in the child's intellect was caused by hypoxic brain injury rather than the spinal tap isn't exactly a revelation. It's their legal defense, and the lawyers would have already prepared her for that. At least, we hope that's what they did.
Excuse me. She took a nasty fall. Her shoulder screamed in pain when we put the ties on.
Hello, I'm Dr. Rabinovich. This is Dr. McKay.
Agents Correa and Russo.
She needs to be looked at before we process her.
What's your name, ma'am?
Anita.
We're gonna take care of you, okay?
What's that mean?
That means that she's going to require an x-ray. It's most likely a rotator cuff tear, which sometimes can come with a fracture. We need an x-ray to rule it out.
How long is that gonna take?
Our computers are down today. Everything's moving a little slower than usual, but we will fast-track her.
Is there anyone you want us to call, Pranita?
No phone calls.
I do not want these guys here any longer than they need to be, so let's find x-ray and fast-track this one.
Your family might be worried. Maybe I can call them.
No. Just stay with her. Make sure she has everything she needs. We treat her injury, and that's it.
Okay.
This is unfortunately a realistic portrayal of what's happening in hospitals all over the country right now. On January 20th, 2025, the Trump administration rescinded Biden-era policies that protected sensitive locations, including hospitals, clinics, schools, and places of worship, from routine immigration enforcement. ICE agents were previously instructed to avoid conducting arrests and raids in those areas. After the policies were rescinded, hospitals became battlegrounds for immigration enforcement. ICE agents in plain clothes have arrested patients inside hospitals and clinics. They've handcuffed public officials like Chicago City Councilman Jesse Fuentes, who is seen here asking whether they have a warrant. They arrested 2 California hospital workers and accused them of interfering with ICE. So how did the show handle the legal issues?
We just need to treat her.
Even if she's undocumented?
All patients, regardless of immigration status, have the right to emergency care under MapTiler.
Dana accurately described the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, or MTALA, which requires any hospital receiving Medicare funding, which is essentially every hospital in the country, to provide stabilizing care to anyone who comes through the door, regardless of immigration status, regardless of insurance, regardless of ability to pay. So Pranita has a legal right to be treated.
Okay, time for you to go.
I was just having a chat with Peter's here.
You can see how busy this department is, right? You've been nothing but a distraction and a disruption since you've been here. I'm already short-staffed, and I just lost 5 nurses and half my environmental services team because you walked in. You know, patients come in here for help, right? Because they're either sick or they're injured, and documented or undocumented, they have a right to emergency care. TB, measles, fractures, none of it's getting treated because everybody's too scared to come in. But then they end up here anyway, but then it's too fucking late. So please, for the love of God, can you just go wait over there in the room with your detainees so I don't lose any more patients or staff?
The interaction between Agent Russo and the hospital clerk is a HIPAA minefield. Hospital staff cannot disclose patient information to ICE without something: a subpoena or warrant, patient consent, a written administrative request, or a specific exception for imminent serious harm. And immigration status does not qualify as imminent serious harm. So if the agent is trying to get information about her medical status, the staff has a legal obligation to refuse unless one of those conditions are met. They can discharge her or notify the agent that she's being discharged, but that's really it.
Come on, she's cleared to go.
Hold on, she needs to sleep.
This will only take a minute.
We're leaving.
Hey, man, you're hurting her.
Jesus Christ, what's going on now?
Robbie?
What the hell is going on?
Hurt her and Jesse stepped in!
I didn't do shit.
The writers probably based this event on the 2 California healthcare workers who are facing felony obstruction charges. In this episode, the conflict started when the doctor and nurse indicate that the treatment wasn't complete. Jesse stepped in, but they didn't show us what happened after he said, "You're hurting her." Whether Jesse was obstructing ICE in the legitimate performance of their duties is a fact-specific inquiry that the writers chose to leave to our imagination. In the United States, nearly 2.8 million healthcare workers are legal immigrants. Of that group, tens of thousands are in the US on temporary protected status. That means they are in the country legally and shouldn't be detained or deported. But in 2025 and 2026, ICE has detained people on TPS, and some of them are held for weeks. So it's not far-fetched for the show to depict fear by the staff as well as the patients. And it's not illegal for them to walk away from their workplace because they're afraid of ICE. It's no different from taking a long lunch or smoking break in the parking lot. Of course, the hospital could fire them, but the healthcare industry faces a real shortage of skilled workers, so hospitals don't have much room to terminate staff under those circumstances. Now for a storyline with 2 distinct legal problems layered on top of each other. The patient here is Christy, a 17-year-old from Tennessee who's traveled to Pittsburgh with her Aunt Lynette to get a medication abortion.
No, what would have been helpful is telling me that my daughter is pregnant. Instead, I find out from a confused teenage boy. Jackson told you? Yeah, he did.
Whoa, everything okay in here?
This is Mrs. Wheeler, Christy's mother. Lynette is Christy's aunt.
She doesn't want to have this baby. This has nothing to do with you.
Okay,
No,
maybe
I
we just
called
take it-
Aunt Lynn. Okay, I don't want to be a teen mom. You're gonna what? Give my daughter the abortion I've forbidden? Hey, what's going on?
And she is, at that moment, legally correct. Pennsylvania requires parental consent for a minor's abortion. There is an exception called a judicial bypass, which allows a minor to petition a judge privately for permission to proceed without parental involvement. But Christy didn't do that. Her aunt brought her in, and the aunt would have to falsify legal forms claiming to be her mother for this to work. The show acknowledges the parental consent requirement directly when the mother arrives and Collins confirms it. When the mother ultimately changes her mind and gives consent, the immediate legal problem resolves. So the show papers over the falsification issue by making it unnecessary in hindsight. But everything that happened before the mother consented was proceeding on falsified documentation or false info and without legal parental authorization. And the legal ramifications don't stop there. Christy is from Tennessee, which has one of the strictest abortion bans in the country. Parts of the law are being challenged in court, but as it stands right now, it is still illegal to physically help a minor go across state lines to obtain an abortion without parental consent. Tennessee calls this abortion trafficking. Someone convicted could face nearly a year in jail, fines, and a civil lawsuit on top of it. If you want to know more about abortion laws and a real doctor's take on abortion and the pit, check out Mama Dr. Jones's video about this episode.
These are Abbott's fetal measurements from yesterday, and these are mine.
10.5 and 11.2. Wow, ultrasound is an art, not a science. Even in the very best hands, the EGA differential can be within 3 to 5 days in the first trimester. Definitely room for error.
Not if you're here for a medication abortion and you're past the mandated 11-week cutoff. I didn't get a single measurement under 11 weeks.
So what are you saying, that Abbott lowballed his measurements to help a teen get the abortion that she wants?
Maybe.
Well, then you've got two choices. You can go with Abbott's measurements, or you can redo your measurements, go back in and pick an angle that shows 11 weeks or less.
Please tell me you're joking.
I love you, Dr. Robbie, but falsifying medical records is a serious state and federal crime, and he could lose his license because of it. Dr. Collins refuses precisely because she understands the stakes. Does the audience sympathize with him? Well, of course. The show frames it that way deliberately. Abbott falsifies records the night before, Robbie falsified records again in the morning, and Collins eventually deleted her own documentation on Robbie's instruction. That's 3 physicians exposed to criminal liability and medical board proceedings on a single patient. They created a lot of evidence that could come back to haunt them. But one more thing the show gets wrong is in the specifics. It says 11 weeks is the Pennsylvania limit for medication abortion. In reality, Pennsylvania law at the time permitted surgical abortion up to 24 weeks, so that was still a potential option for this patient. The FDA-approved limit for medication abortion is 10 weeks, with some clinical guidelines extending to 11. Either way, the 11-week figure is simply a clinical guideline for medication abortion specifically, not a statutory limit. A surgical abortion at 12 or 13 weeks would have been entirely legal. Nobody in that hospital mentions this option.
You know where your son is now?
No, but he hasn't done anything.
Officer, why are you here?
We received the call that her son David has created a list of girls he would like to eliminate.
Who called you?
Do you know anything about this list?
Somebody called you. Who? Somebody from my hospital?
Dr. McKay?
This thread plays out in the background of season 1, and the show manages to get the nuances just right. What happens when someone makes written threats in a private diary? Legally, it's a gray area. The starting point is Tarasoff v. Regents of the University of California, which says clinicians may have a duty to warn or protect when a patient poses a credible threat to identifiable victims. On paper, this looks like a clean case. A list of names likely satisfies the identifiable victims requirement. But that's only half the test. The legal question isn't whether someone is threatened, it's whether a reasonable clinician would believe harm is serious and imminent based on what they know at that moment, which requires them to think about things like how specific the threat is, whether the person has access to weapons, and their immediate behavior. When we're talking about a teenager drawing up a hit list, it's often hard to know whether the person is making a real actionable threat or just trying their hand at edging some bad edgelord poetry. You might say common sense dictates we err on the side of caution, but that's not what the law says. I talked about this in my video about the Michigan teenager who killed 4 students. There were serious issues in that case about whether his parents or teachers should have intervened. The more important consideration for the doctors of the pit is who actually has the duty. Tarasoff comes out of mental health treatment. ER physicians are in a more ambiguous position, especially under Pennsylvania law, which generally requires a specific and immediate threat before a duty to warn is triggered. That arguably gives Robbie some legal cover for hesitating. So what are they supposed to do? Well, there are a number of steps they can take, from warning potential victims to contacting police. They landed on a temporary psychiatric hold, which is legally defensible because it removes the immediate risk without breaching confidentiality more than necessary.
To call a 302 in the state of Pennsylvania, the petitioner needs to admit to having witnessed the concerning behavior, and you need a physician and a social worker to sign off, which both Kiara and I can do.
What if I'm wrong?
Then you apologize. And we will help you explain that this came from concern for his safety.
The show did a good job of illustrating the legal tension here because both acting and not acting carry a risk. Move too slowly and you risk liability if harm was foreseeable. Act too aggressively and you risk violating doctor-patient confidentiality or overreacting to a threat that wasn't real.
Hi, David.
I didn't shoot anybody. I wouldn't do that.
I know.
Did you make a list of girls you wanted to hurt?
Where's my mom?
Did you make a list?
I want to go home.
You're gonna get to go home. But first, we have to keep you here for a mandatory 72-hour hold.
What?
The show's final twist is, I'll give you 3 seconds to click way to this time code if you don't want it spoiled. We good? Our adorable little edgelord David is not the Pitfest shooter. Robbie's caution looks vindicated. Legally, though, the outcome doesn't matter. The law doesn't judge outcomes. It judges whether the response was reasonable given what was known at the time. But you'd be hard-pressed to find a prosecutor willing to go after a doctor for not detaining a potential mass shooter who wasn't. Which is why the storyline perfectly illustrates why mandatory disclosure cases are so difficult in real life. It's not about who was right. It's about how hard it is to evaluate whether someone poses an imminent credible threat to the safety of others. Now let's talk about Dr. Langdon. Because this storyline is a legal onion. Every layer you peel back reveals another layer, and all of them sting.
I heard there's been some inconsistencies with meds intended for your patients.
What?
Frank, have you been helping yourself to benzos from the ER?
Yeah, I've been stealing blood, too.
I asked you a question.
Wait, are you serious? What are you doing? Really? Santos. Whatever the hell she told you is bullshit.
I didn't mention Santos.
You didn't have to. I told you, she is trouble.
Have you ever taken a patient's medication?
This is insane. This is completely fucking insane.
I need you to open your locker.
Yeah, right.
Open your locker.
You're gonna
open your fucking locker, or I will have security smash it open. Is the imprint code on these pills going to match Louis' Librium? Go home, Frank.
Dr. Langdon stealing a patient's benzodiazepine pills leads us in 5 different directions simultaneously. 1 is the hospital required to report the theft to police. Well, under Pennsylvania law, a hospital is not automatically required to report employee theft to law enforcement. It's not like mandated reporting for child abuse, where the law creates an affirmative obligation. We saw that in season 1, when a child ate dad's cannabis gummies. The hospital had to report. However, if those pills are controlled substances, we've entered federal territory. The Controlled Substances Act creates DEA reporting obligations. Hospitals are registered with the DEA to handle controlled substances, and significant discrepancies in controlled substance inventories, like drugs going missing because a physician helped himself, trigger mandatory reporting to the DEA. And if they fail, fines can be steep. 2 California medical centers had to fork over $2.2 million in fines for over 600 record-keeping discrepancies. The hospital doesn't have to call local police, but they have to account for the missing medications in their DEA records. And once the DEA is involved, law enforcement is effectively in the picture whether the hospital wanted it or not. Short answer, the hospital probably doesn't have to call 911, but it absolutely cannot pretend this didn't happen. 2, are they required to report to the state medical board? Well, this one is clearer. Pennsylvania's Medical Practice Act requires institutions to report disciplinary actions taken against physicians. If the hospital took any action against Langdon, like suspension or mandatory leave, that action itself triggers a report to the board. A doctor stealing patient medication checks that box with a Sharpie, probably one of those extra fat Sharpies. And once the board knows, Langdon is looking at a formal investigation. Potential outcomes range from a reprimand to suspension to full license revocation. 3, what about the physician health program? But here's where it gets so much more interesting than most people realize. If Langdon's pill theft is connected to a substance abuse issue, and a physician stealing controlled substances from a patient is a blazing neon sign pointing toward addiction, then there's a parallel track that exists specifically for this situation, the Physician Health Program, or PHP. Every state has some version of a PHP. In Pennsylvania, it's called the Professional Health Monitoring Program. These programs exist because the medical profession decided that criminalizing addiction wasn't always the best practice. Sometimes impaired physicians need a pathway back to safe practice. So this program gets the doctor into treatment, where they're rigorously monitored before and after treatment. The PHP happens outside the public disciplinary process. A PHP doesn't immunize a doctor from criminal liability. If a doctor is enrolled, compliance with the program can mitigate criminal penalties. It cuts the other way too. If the doctor doesn't comply or continues to practice while impaired, prosecutors could ask for more severe penalties. 4, does the hospital have to tell his colleagues?
Santos and Langdon have beef because she's the one who turned him in for taking meds.
I'm sorry, what?
Short answer, no, because PHP participation is confidential. When Langdon entered the PHP, he became a patient receiving treatment for substance use. HIPAA protections apply to Langdon. So a physician who voluntarily enters a PHP before formal board action can avoid having the matter become a public record. But this conversation was about him stealing pills from a patient, which Dr. Robbie probably shouldn't have blurted out. What he did was confirm that Langdon committed a crime which doesn't go to his treatment status. So when a colleague asks, "Why wasn't I told?" the frustrating but legally correct answer is, because you don't have a right to be told. The hospital's obligation is to ensure patient safety through appropriate restrictions, not to circulate the details of why those restrictions exist. Maddening from a collegial trust standpoint? Absolutely. Legally correct? Also absolutely. But there's one really important exception. If Langdon's impairment creates a patient safety risk, the hospital must restrict his practice. So that brings us to legal issue number 5. Can he ethically treat the same patient he stole from 10 months ago?
I'm sorry. It was not only wrong and utterly unprofessional, but it was a betrayal of my Hippocratic oath, and it was a fucking crime.
This is an almost textbook conflict of interest. The ethical answer is no, he can't treat Lewis, even if he apologized and confessed. That might be one of the 12 steps, but it doesn't erase the ethical problem. The AMA Code of Medical Ethics is clear that physicians must avoid situations where personal interests compromise or even appear to compromise patient care. A physician who stole medication from a specific patient has fundamentally breached the trust relationship with that patient. The doctor-patient relationship is basically fiduciary. You owe your patient loyalty, honesty, and care. You cannot simultaneously be the person who violated that trust and the person they're supposed to trust with their health. Beyond the ethics, there's a practical legal exposure. If anything goes wrong with that patient's care, even something completely unrelated to the theft, the fact that Langdon stole from this patient and then continued treating them becomes Exhibit A in the malpractice case. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is the doctor who stole my client's medication and then continued treating her as though nothing happened. The hospital should have reassigned the patient immediately. Langdon continuing to treat the same patient he stole from is a failure of institutional safeguards on top of the individual ethical violation. Lastly, when Langdon took the benzo pills, he committed 2 misdemeanors under Pennsylvania law. First, possession of a controlled substance, and second, theft by unlawful taking. Now, being charged with and convicted of misdemeanors isn't good for a doctor, but it may not be as professionally and personally devastating as a felony. And he probably avoids a felony. There is a felony for acquiring a controlled substance through subterfuge, and that sounds like it might capture Langdon's theft. But in a 2002 case, the Pennsylvania Superior Court held that a pharmacist who secretly pocketed some hydrocodone isn't acquiring that controlled substance by subterfuge or deception or fraud. It's just plain old theft. So good for Langdon, I guess. In the state of Pennsylvania, it's not illegal to drive a motorcycle without a helmet so long as you're 21 or older, and you have either been licensed to operate a motorcycle for at least 2 full calendar years, or have completed a PennDOT or Motorcycle Safety Foundation approved motorcycle safety course. But you should always wear one. You're not Dr. Robbie or Maverick. So here's where I come down. Dr. Mike called The Pitt the most legally accurate medical show of all time. It also happens to be, by a significant margin, the most legally literate medical drama currently on television. It's not perfect, that July 4th deposition is going to follow me to my grave, but it names real statutes. It depicts genuine tensions between patient rights, institutional obligations, and law enforcement authority. It reflects the current legal reality we all now live in, as experienced by real-world doctors and healthcare workers. And it does all of it without preaching a message or nagging the audience to do better. Hell, most legal dramas treat the law as an obstacle the writers and producers have to heroically overcome. I'm looking at you, Ryan Murphy, and All's Fair. But The Pitt treats law as part of the actual environment these people work in. The law protects them, fails them, and often forces them into choices that don't have any good answers. That's reality. And that's why I'm giving this show an overall legal accuracy score of A. Not perfect, but the fact that I'm even grading it on a curve with reality instead of just laughing at it, that tells you something.
Now, all this highlights why it's so important to get a great lawyer when you're dealing with your own case. Now, after I started this channel, every week I'd get hundreds of comments and emails from viewers who are dealing with legal problems. And they'd ask, can you help me find a lawyer? Or how do I know if this attorney is any good? And there's a massive gap in our justice system. It's that people don't know how to find the right lawyer for their specific situation. They're scared, they're overwhelmed, and they end up doing nothing or hiring the first attorney who calls them back. And that really bothered me. So I started to wonder, what if there was a different way? What if we could build a law firm that actually lived up to the values that I talk about on this channel? Transparency, accessibility, and putting clients first instead of chasing billable hours. A firm where you don't need to pay anything up front, and your lawyers only get paid if you do to maximize your opportunity for justice. So a few years ago, I decided to fix that problem. I decided to start my own personal injury law firm. And honestly, it wasn't an easy choice. But I realized I was in this unique position. I had this platform, this community, and the experience. Not to get rich, trust me, there are easier ways to make money than starting a law practice. But we did it because access to justice shouldn't be a luxury. Because finding the right legal representation shouldn't feel like playing Russian roulette with your future. And when you work with my firm, you're not just getting a lawyer. You're getting a team that understands that behind every case is a real person with real stakes. If we can't represent you or you're in a state where we don't practice, we'll take the time to try to match you with an attorney in my personal network of lawyers. A national network of some of the best lawyers in the country who actually specialize in what you're going through, located right where you are, not just whoever happens to be available. So if you're dealing with a personal injury, a car crash, a data breach, sexual harassment, a social security or workers' comp issue, give us a call at the number on screen or click on the link below. Now, I can't represent everyone that watches this channel. I wish I could, but what I can do is make sure that when you need legal help, you have somewhere to turn to that you can trust. So whether it's me handling your case or the incredible attorneys we partnered with, you'll get the same principles of honesty and education that we bring to every video. And if you're dealing with a legal issue and you're not sure where to start, check out the link in the description. Let's have a conversation about how we can help you find not just a lawyer, but the right lawyer for your situation. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about, making sure that when life gets complicated, you don't have to face it alone. Which is why when you need a lawyer, you don't just need a legal team, you need the Eagle team.